My name is Daniel Carter, and for almost 30 years, I was the man behind one of the biggest companies in the city. But almost nobody knew what I had become. People saw the expensive buildings, the luxury cars, the private meetings, and the headlines about Carter Industries. They saw the success. They didn't see the lonely nights. After my wife died, the company stopped feeling like an achievement and started feeling like a prison. My daughter Emily was the only person who still made my life feel normal. She had grown into a kind, intelligent woman, and eventually she told me she had fallen in love. His name was Ryan. The first time I met him, he was nervous. We sat across from each other at a small restaurant. Ryan kept looking at me like he was trying to figure out whether I approved of him. Finally, I asked him, "What do you want from life?" He thought for a moment. "I want to build something myself," I smiled. "That's a good answer," he continued. "I don't want to marry Emily because of her family. I don't want your money. I want to earn my own." Those words stayed with me. After their wedding, Ryan started applying for jobs. A few weeks later, Emily called me. "Dad, Ryan got hired! That's great! Where?" She laughed. "Carter Industries." I nearly dropped the phone. My own company. Ryan had no idea, and I decided not to tell him. You see, I had recently stepped away from the CEO position. Officially, I was retired. Unofficially, I still owned the company. The board believed I needed peace and wanted to remain behind the scenes. I agreed. But now I had another reason to stay hidden. I wanted to know who Ryan really was. Not the man sitting across from me at dinner. Not the man trying to impress my daughter. The real man. So I created a simple identity for myself. Daniel Carter. Retired consultant. I began visiting the company several times a week. I dressed simply. I carried an old briefcase. I sat in a small office away from the executive floor. Most employees barely noticed me. Ryan certainly didn't know who I was. On his first day, I watched him from a distance. His manager, Victor Mason, welcomed him. Victor had worked for me for 17 years. I trusted him more than almost anyone. He shook Ryan's hand and said, "You're lucky to be joining us. This is a very competitive company." Ryan smiled. "I'll work hard." And he did. For the first few months, Ryan became one of the most hard-working employees in the building. He arrived before his manager. He left after almost everyone else. He never complained. He even helped employees who had nothing to do with his department. I began to feel proud. Maybe Emily had chosen well. Then something changed. One Thursday evening, I was preparing to leave when I noticed Ryan walking through the hallway. He was carrying a black folder. He looked nervous. He entered a conference room. I watched from a distance. Almost an hour later, he came out. The folder was gone. The next morning, I asked one of the employees what Ryan had been working on. "Financial reports," she said. I thought nothing of it, until I reviewed the company's internal numbers. There was a problem. A small amount of money was missing from several accounts. Nothing obvious, nothing large enough to trigger an investigation, but the pattern was strange. Money was being transferred through multiple companies, then returned through different accounts. I spent an entire night studying the records. By sunrise, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't one mistake. Someone had been stealing from Carter Industries for years, and the person doing it understood the company's financial system extremely well. I immediately thought of Victor. Then I stopped myself. Victor had been with me for 17 years. He had helped me build the company. I couldn't believe he would betray me. Then I noticed something. Every suspicious transaction had been approved by someone connected to Victor's department. But there was another problem. Ryan had access to some of the same records. That meant he could be involved. I hated the thought. Still, I decided to watch him carefully. A week later, Ryan entered my small office. "Mr. Carter?" I looked up. "Yes? Can I talk to you?" "Of course." He closed the door. "I think there's a serious problem with the company's finances." My heart began beating faster. "What kind of problem?" "Money is disappearing." I stayed silent. Ryan placed several documents on my desk. I found transactions that don't make sense. I looked at the papers. They were the same transactions I'd been studying. "Did you report this?" "Yes." "To Victor?" "Yes. What did he say?" Ryan hesitated. He told me I was new and didn't understand how the company operated. I looked at him. And do you believe him? No. That answer told me everything. Ryan wasn't stealing. He was investigating. I asked him, "Why are you still looking into it?" He looked surprised. "Because it's wrong. You could lose your job." "I know." "You could damage your career." "I know." "Then why?" Ryan took a breath. "Because someone has to stop it." I stared at him. For the first time, I saw the man behind my daughter's husband. He wasn't chasing money. He was chasing the truth. But I still didn't tell him who I was. Instead, I asked, "What do you have?" Ryan opened his bag. He had copied dozens of transactions. He had written down dates, employee names, account numbers, company addresses, everything. I told him to be careful. He nodded. But neither of us knew how dangerous the investigation would become. 3 days later, Ryan's computer stopped working. The IT department claimed it was a technical failure. But when his computer came back, several of his files were missing. Ryan came to me again. "This isn't an accident," I asked why. "Because the files that disappeared were the ones related to the suspicious payments. That night, I accessed the company's security system. Someone had entered Ryan's office after midnight. The person was wearing a hood. But there was something familiar about the way he walked. I watched the footage again, and again. Then I froze. The man was Victor. I couldn't believe it. The next morning, I confronted Victor indirectly. "Have you noticed anything unusual in finance?" He looked at me calmly. "No, everything is under control." I watched his eyes. He was lying. I decided not to confront him yet. I needed proof. Meanwhile, Ryan continued investigating. Then the threats began. His car was followed. His phone received anonymous messages. Someone warned him to stop asking questions. Ryan didn't tell Emily. He didn't want her worried. But I knew, and I realized I had made a mistake. I had kept my identity secret for too long. If Victor discovered that Ryan was my son-in-law, he might use Emily against him, so I quietly hired independent investigators. Within 2 weeks, they found something shocking. Victor wasn't working alone. Several senior employees were involved, but there was one name that shocked me more than any other. My own financial director, a man named Richard. Richard had been with me since the company's early days. He had access to everything: bank accounts, contracts, payroll, investment records. And he had been secretly working with Victor. They had created fake companies and used them to move money out of Carter Industries. But there was still one question. Why had Ryan discovered them? The answer came from a single transaction. Ryan had noticed that one of the fake companies had accidentally used the same office address as another company. That tiny mistake had exposed the entire operation. And now Victor knew Ryan was getting close. One evening, Ryan came to my office looking exhausted. "I think they're going to fire me." "Why?" My manager called me into his office. "What happened?" He said, "I've been asking too many questions." I stood up. "Ryan, listen to me." He looked at me. "If you believe something is wrong, don't stop looking for the truth." He nodded. Then he said something that broke my heart. "I'm scared, Mr. Carter." I didn't know what to say. So I simply told him, "You're not alone." The following morning, Ryan was suspended. The official reason was misconduct. I knew it was a lie. Emily called me. "Dad, something is wrong. What happened?" "Ryan says he hasn't done anything." "I know." She went silent. "How do you know?" I realized I had said too much. I quickly changed the subject, but Emily was suspicious. She had always been intelligent, and now she started asking questions. That evening, she came to my house. "Dad, what aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. That's not true." I looked at my daughter. I couldn't lie anymore. But before I could speak, my phone rang. It was the chairman of Carter Industries. "Daniel, we have a problem." "What happened?" "Someone accessed the emergency financial account." My blood ran cold. Only 5 people had access, and one of them was me. I immediately drove to the company. When I arrived, the board was already in the conference room. Victor was there, Richard was there, and Ryan was there too. Someone had accused Ryan of stealing the money. Victor placed documents on the table. "The evidence is clear." Ryan stared at him. "This is a setup." Victor shook his head. "You were the only person investigating those accounts." Everyone looked at Ryan. Then Victor said, "Perhaps he wasn't investigating the theft. He paused. Perhaps he was responsible for it. Ryan looked furious. You know that's not true. Victor turned to the board. We need to involve the authorities. I finally spoke. No. Everyone turned toward me. Victor looked irritated. And who are you to stop this? I slowly walked toward the head of the table. Then I removed the old employee badge hanging around my neck. Underneath it was my executive identification. Daniel Carter, owner and founder. The room became completely silent. Ryan stared at me. Emily, who had followed me into the building, covered her mouth. Victor's face went completely white. I looked at him. You asked who I am. I placed my identification on the table. I'm the man who built this company. Nobody spoke. I turned toward Ryan. He looked betrayed. You knew? No. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know whether you were here for my daughter or for my money. Ryan looked down. Then he said quietly, I never wanted your money. I know. I turned toward Victor. And that's why you're going to regret what you did. I ordered the security team to bring up the footage. The screen showed Victor entering Ryan's office. Then Richard. Then both men meeting with representatives from the fake companies. Victor tried to interrupt. These videos don't prove. I raised my hand. Wait. Another video appeared. This time, Victor was transferring confidential documents. Then another. Richard was approving fake invoices. Then another. Victor was moving money. The room was silent. Victor finally sat down. His confidence disappeared. Richard began blaming him. Victor blamed Richard. Within minutes, they were accusing each other. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. The investigation eventually uncovered millions of dollars in stolen company funds. Victor and Richard were removed from the company, and the other employees involved were dismissed. Ryan's suspension was immediately cancelled. But I offered him something more. I asked him to join the company's leadership team. He refused at first. I don't want the position because you're my father-in-law, I smiled. Good. Then why? Because you earned it, Ryan accepted. Years passed. Under his leadership, the company became even stronger. He never changed. He still arrived early. He still stayed late. And he still treated the receptionist with the same respect he showed the board. One evening, Ryan came into my office, the same small office where we had first spoken. He looked at me and smiled. You know, when I started working here, I thought you were just some retired consultant. I laughed. And I thought you might be stealing from me. He laughed too. Fair enough. Then he became serious. Why did you really hide your identity? I looked out the window. Because money can reveal the worst in people. I paused. But sometimes it reveals the best. Ryan nodded. I handed him a set of keys. He looked confused. What are these? The keys to my office. He stared at me. Why? Because it's time. Time for what? I smiled. Time for you to take over. He immediately shook his head. I can't replace you. You're not replacing me. I stood up. You're continuing what I started. Ryan looked at the keys in his hand. Then he hugged me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the owner of a company. I felt like a father who had finally found the son he never had. I learned something during those years. You can test someone's loyalty with money. You can test someone's courage with pressure. But if you really want to know who someone is, give them power when they think nobody is watching. Ryan had every opportunity to betray me. He didn't know I was watching. He didn't know I was the owner. He didn't know there was anything to gain. And yet, he chose to do the right thing. That was why I trusted him with everything. Not because he became my son-in-law. Not because he worked for my company. But because when he thought I was just an ordinary old man in a small office, he treated me like I mattered.